From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode number 456. I am Andrew in our forum, and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. I am joined as always by my co-host Derek. He is D43 in our forum, and also on Twitter at D4384 and D43G. Derek, unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to connect and play this week, but it's good to finish up the week talking to you as always. What's on your mind, my friend?
I wish we had connected this week. That would have been fun. But both of us were pretty busy, and you were incredibly hard to get a hold of. The good thing, though, for the community is that you did upload a really fun NBA 2K14 gameplay video, a 94-95 matchup between the two finals teams, the Orlando Magic and the Houston Rockets. And man, NBA 2K14 really looks good, doesn't it?
It does, even with a retro filter to make it look a bit old school. Still holds up very well, and still enjoying that retro series. And yeah, more to come.
Absolutely, definitely check out Andrew's upload. But I did want to start off this podcast reading off a funny tweet, and I know that you got a kick out of it when I just shared it with you. The tweet is from @DrLegendU, so he's NSG Big Dog Banna on Twitter. He says, I didn't know 2K had an age limit. First thing the young kids say is old head this, old head that. Like our age is supposed to make us play worse. We going to forever tap that behind because we actually played the sport and you all built off YouTube videos. You all need new insults to use. And it cracks me up when people try to insult the older generation of gamers and fans and whatnot by calling them an old head. It's not an insult. So I love that tweet. And also, we've been playing the video games a lot longer than these kids today. So we also have experience on our side, right? So I love that tweet. I love that he calls out the whole old head thing. And I know you appreciated that.
Oh, for sure. Ever since I heard that term come up and be used on social media, it's... I've given it a side eye because basically comes down to, the whole argument comes down to, you are older, you have more experience, so you don't know what you're talking about, which is antithetical to having more experience, right?
Yeah, call me an old head. You're complimenting me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Actually,
yeah.
Which is how he took it and everything. And I love how he said, we played, the real game and whatnot, as in like we played real basketball. I do think that there's a good percentage of the gamer base now that either doesn't play competitively or doesn't play at all or even casually and whatnot. And then they're jumping on the virtual hardwood. And you can usually tell who they are. You've talked about those players before, where they don't look like they know what they're doing on the court, and they don't understand like basic stuff like help defense or how to play defense, or they don't want to play defense.
Close out a game. They don't know how to close out a game.
They spam they don't know how to close out a game. They just spam their dribbling constantly. They do unnecessary dribbles. They'll have an open lane to the basket and they'll dribble it back out for no reason and start dribble spamming even more. So like, I love that because people like you and me, we come from a time where we watched and played basketball where it was about like quick decision making, right? Like getting that quick first step and bursting, or, executing a crossover and blowing by your guy off that one crossover. It wasn't, really about dribble spamming. It wasn't really about all of this unnecessary BS and 1,000 threes a game and everything. It was, more fundamental, more basic, and more efficient basketball. So like, yeah, the old head insult thing, it's ridiculous because, like I said, I don't even consider it an insult.
And like he says, it's become a very stock insult as well, and is one of many stock insults and arguments that are used online. You see it in basketball discourse, you see it in basketball gaming discourse, you see it in pretty much any conversation online. It just comes down to those same cliches. You put out something that's kind of insulting with a kissy emoji at the end to kind of razz people, and that the argument is really just trying to be a jerk with the emojis, or the same words, the same phrasing, the same insults as he said, and it's just the same conversation over and over again. And if you try to bring a more in-depth conversation. That's when people will back off and say, "Oh, I don't want to argue. We're grown men talking about other grown men." But you engaged. You engaged, and now you're getting owned in this conversation, if you will, to use another stock phrase there. You're getting. I'm bringing facts and arguments to the table because I thought, we're going to have a conversation about this. But now you just wanted to talk in cliches and insults, so you're backing off and still declaring victory. Unfortunately, online discourse. I know the word toxic is overused these days. It's very unsatisfying, Derek, if nothing else.
It is. I was just watching, and I posted about this on Twitter. I was just watching St. John's, who's 9-1, versus UNH, real life college hoops, and whatnot. I was watching that game, and St. John's in the last 4 games was shooting 21% from 3. That's bad, Andrew. That's 2 out of 10, and they kept firing up threes in this first half. A bunch of them were open. Brick. UNH actually was, I think, down by 2 at the end of the first half. They're 3-5. They're a Division I AA team. And then they went up early in the second half as a result. But it's like, stop trying to tell us that everything is better today. Stop trying to tell us that everything is evolved and everything, because I'm telling you, I watch college basketball today, and I'll catch NBA games from time to time and whatnot, and I just want to shut it off. I think you're very much in the same boat. You mentioned recently how it seems like no NBA team really knows how to close out games anymore. It's like a lost art. We're still seeing 70 to 80 threes go up per game, and the efficiency is not going up either. They're still shooting at the percentages that we've had, and roughly in the last 20 years or so. It's the low 30% range, and it's getting old. Speaking of old, you talk about old heads. That's getting old.
Yes, it absolutely is, and that was the Lakers 76ers game yesterday, where the 76ers almost threw it away. I see a lot of leads not be protected when I watch basketball games these days. And I guess people think that's exciting because there's comebacks. But it's not because they're mounting a strategic comeback, or people say, because they play better or better shooters. No, it's because a lot of teams don't know how to protect leads. They get a big lead, and then they just keep firing and missing threes, letting the other team chip away at the lead. And in the fourth quarter, I've seen that poor execution, that it's so important when you've got a 7-point lead with less than a minute left. I mean, is that a safe lead? I mean, not compared to, say, a 20, 25-point lead, obviously, but that is still something you can protect. And it really makes sense when you play online, which you don't, very sensibly so, as I've said before. And I've not been playing online the last few weeks. We've kind of put that aside at NLSC Thrillho because it was just getting too frustrating. But when you go to the rec, or you play other teams in Team Pro-Am, 2K Pro-Am, the organized squad side of things, you do see that. You see people squandering leads because they're just still going for stats. They're not winding down the clock, not effective clock management to take away that opportunity to come back. And it really does reflect the real-life game. So it makes a lot more sense when you do watch the real game and see that is what's influencing them on the virtual hardwood as well.
Yeah, and another piece of that, too, is you notice how when you're playing pickup, like online on NBA 2K, or like if I catch footage from, YouTube or whatnot where people uploaded their online play, you notice that hardly anybody is taking mid-range shots or knows how to get a shot in the mid-range, right? And everybody has like a set shot assigned to their player and whatnot. And people really don't know how to finish around the rim. They don't use up fakes or anything like that. Like I've watched some college basketball recently, and if they're trying to emulate what they're watching, they're actually probably doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah,
it feels like
that's sim gaming. Basketball 2022.
Yeah, it feels like in college basketball now, and in much of the NBA, there's hardly anybody who elevates on a jump shot. They just don't have like a jump shot. It's mostly set shooting, a couple inches off the ground. A lot of people shooting from their forehead or from their face, and whatnot. It's very similar across the board, actually, in the college basketball game and in the NBA. There's nobody that really they don't seem to be very comfortable at all in the mid-range as far as like creating their own shot. They don't feel confident around the basket. I think I saw 3 air balls right at the rim in the St. John's UNH game and whatnot. And nobody really knows how to use their body much. So and there's also a lot of over dribbling and a lot of like just kind of almost feeling like faking sim. I know Kid Cash laughed at that, like faking sim in real life. Yes, that's almost what it feels like.
Moving without
Sometimes,
purpose, really.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, watching basketball today absolutely drives me nuts. And it's not like get with the times, man. It's like I know when basketball was different, when it was taught differently at the youth level, when it was played at a higher level, actually both in college hoops and in the NBA. Like some of the teams and players in college basketball in the 80s and 90s and some of those draft classes and everything, absolutely filthy, Andrew. Just the talent was absolutely enormous. And I just feel like, it's kind of declined.
It's the fundamentals as well. Learning that the underlying fundamentals of basketball that was very solid. And again, it's the same in games as well. That people, okay, we need to green this release and whatnot. Sure, okay, you know these mechanics and the left-right cheese and everything. But what about picking your spots, looking for that space, chipping away to lead with a couple of easy baskets to get momentum? Just these basketball strategies that are so fundamental to the sport that have really fallen by the wayside in real life to a certain extent, but it's what also gets on the highlight reels, does it not? And that influences how people play as well.
The highlights aren't as good today, though, Andrew. That's like I've talked about this so many times before. When you're putting up 70 to 80 threes a game and you're shooting anywhere between 20 and 33% or something like that for those, you're not attacking the rim, right? You're not getting a posterizing dunk. You're not doing a fancy layup. You're not, getting a great finish on contact. You're not, doing a great post move, Hakeem-esque and whatnot. You're just shooting threes, right?
Sure.
And so you're not getting as many highlights today either. My brother and I sometimes what we'll do at night is we'll go on YouTube and we'll watch the game highlights for Celtics Mavericks or something like that, whatever games were the night before. And it's usually about 10 or 11 minutes of highlights. And we sometimes in those 10, 11 minutes of highlights, we don't see like one post-up play.
Yeah.
And you might see like one dunk and it's completely wide open with the defender moving out of the way. But then we go back and we can watch an early 80s game. And let's say it's the 76ers versus the Celtics, and it's like 1980, 81 or something. And you see Daryl Dawkins 3 or 4 times a game posterizing 2 or 3 Celtics, right? Or Bobby Jones flying in and throwing it down. And it's like the highlights aren't better today either. And that should be an obvious thing because, like I said, the majority of shots that are going up now are what? 23 feet or more away from the basket.
Exactly. And when you're inside, you don't have those shot blockers as you used to have. You brought up on a previous show that the players that were about 6th or 7th in shot blocking or even lower back in the day would be 2nd or even 1st these days. Back on our 150th episode together, you noted the players that would have 150 blocks would be ranked much higher at the end of the season these days. And when you don't have those shot blockers, when you're just trying to take charges or you're not trying to challenge at the rim, you don't have those dunks that are really nasty, facial dunks.
Right, and the rules have also gone against the defense as well. So it's not only the AAU teachings in this AAU generation, which is that college basketball game I was just watching was like AAU to a T. It was driving me absolutely nuts. I got to be completely honest with you. But it's not just the AAU generation of hoops and everything. It's the fact that in the NBA, the defense is at such a big disadvantage because of the rules. So, you can't really make contact with the offensive player. The paint is mostly wide open as a result because there's 2 rules going against the defense now that are keeping them out of the paint. People talk about legal defense back in the day, but today we have defensive 3-second violation and we have the semicircle. Yes. That's right under the hoop. So there's 2 different pieces that are keeping defenders away from the rim. But yeah, but let's bring it back to video games. So when you watch people play online today, if they're not a basketball player themselves, or they only were a basketball player in this AAU generation, either casually or in AAU, or they basically are just a casual fan in general or whatnot. If they're watching, they're playing like what they see, like what they watch. So if they're doing all of this wild over dribbling at the top of the key and then taking a stupid step back 3 from 25 or 30 feet, it's because they saw James Harden do it, right?
Oh, for sure.
Or they saw Luka Doncic do it, or they saw, some like countless other players in the league, just fire up a contested three on the fast break, even though they should have gone to the rim and maybe they had a 2-on-1 or 3-on-1, but they thought that shot looks like something they saw in the NBA because people emulate the NBA, right? So yeah, I think the online scene is a mess on the court a lot of times when I watch the footage, and I think just it's because this is what they're seeing on the college and pro level today.
Well, the analytics generation, you and I are not big fans of that. And we've seen how that focus on so-called efficiency and, threes are worth more than two, so take more of them. But if you're missing more of them, that's a lot of missed shots and rather ugly basketball. Running up and chucking up missed threes 7 plays in a row is not, to me, efficient. I mean, it would have been efficient if you made it, I suppose.
How many games do I need to see a box score, Andrew, where I see a team go 10 for 42 from three, or 8 for 35, or 8 for 36? You can see it nightly.
You can,
and
but
then they lose the game, and sometimes by only a few points. And it's like, yeah, but if you had just attacked the basket instead of taking that stupid three.
Exactly.
Or those 10
you would have won by 20 if you didn't take those threes.
Right.
And
that's common sense.
It is, but it's come down to this love of analytics and certain formulas that say, this is the way to play. And yet, for so many, unless you have great shooters, it's not going to work out. And even then, even the Golden State Warriors would not lead the league in threes. They were when they were winning the championships there. They took a lot of them, but also took a lot of mid-range shots, especially when Kevin Durant was on the team. And that's
and they were also taking good threes. Can I just point that out too?
Yes,
though
yes.
A lot of the threes that the Golden State Warriors took were sets where somebody would get completely wide open and they could fire away. I mean, Klay Thompson, how many points did he score with only taking one dribble? Or only a couple dribbles or something? Didn't he score 50 in a game?
Yes.
Doing that at one point? People got to understand it's not all, and also the Warriors are the exception to the rule. Every team had Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry at one point. But anyway, and before Durant, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry. But they took smarter threes. They had more confidence in their shot than the majority of the players in the league do now. And some of the players that have confidence in their three-point shot are not shooting a good percentage. They're shooting between 20 and 30%.
Exactly,
or in the super low 30s. So, but I can't stand that, the whole thing where somebody will say, man, but people are shooting from 30 feet now or 35 feet. Well, no, there's only a couple players that actually hit shots like that
regularly.
And, and they don't even shoot a good percentage. It's Steph Curry and Damian Lillard usually. But their percentages from that deep, from those really deep areas, is absolutely piss poor.
Yes.
Overall, it's not a good shot, even for the best shooters in the league. Just like if Dan Marley went out there, or Jeff Hornacek, or Mahmoud Abdul-Aruf, it wouldn't be a great shot for them back in the day. So, but this gets to our main topic.
Sorry, I was just thinking of that time we connected on Live 95, and you were hitting those shots from half court with Dan Marley, well beyond half court and just swishing.
I have no regrets over that.
Yeah,
I think I scored 41 points. I think I scored 41 points. It would have been 6 minutes. Yeah,
that was ridiculous. But no, and also of course as we get into this topic, the focus on stats, the way that the game is focused on allowing people to put up big numbers, regardless of whether they win the game or not. And you see that translate into the online game, that people are going for these stats when, no, make the right play to win the game. Oh, no, we want our triple-double. Oh, we want to score 50 in the in 5-minute quarters in the rec. But you've lost the game. That's the ultimate goal is to win the game, not put up stats. I mean, yes, that does happen. And look, we've always admired stats. I mean, Wilt Chamberlain's records are incredible. That's always been a part of basketball history, that he has these ridiculous numbers. But also, we also point out that Bill Russell was the one winning championships.
Yeah, the get yours mentality and the whole thing where it's, well, I put up numbers, so you can't blame it on me. Just to let people know out there, you can put up numbers, and if your numbers are great and you did that, it can still be a detriment to your team.
Was it the right play?
Because nobody else was able to get into the flow.
Yeah.
Drives me absolutely nuts. Just like when James Harden or Luka Doncic go on their like Super Bowl hog sprees where they're just dribbling at the top of the key and there's 4 guys standing around the perimeter and they dribble the air out of the ball and they end the play with like a step back 3, or they'll call a screen and somebody else tries to help them just so they can take a terrible shot. It's like those 4 guys that were standing around on that play, and for so many plays in that game, did not touch the ball. They did not get a feel for the ball. They were not able to get into a rhythm. They were not able to put their stamp on the game, and that's to a detriment of your team. So big numbers, there needs to be context around that, because that's so much of what is missing in today's game as far as like an understanding is Luka Doncic could score 40 points and like dish out 14 assists in a game, but he could hurt his team in that game because he dribbled the air out of the ball and took bad shots all game.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and he could still shoot a poor percentage. Nobody's looking at his turnover numbers. Nobody's looking at how he's taking his teammates out of the game.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, NBA-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
But yeah, you see it online and everything. There's people that post for NBA 2K, there's people that post their screenshots of their box scores and whatnot. And you'll see something ridiculous, like somebody going like, I don't know, like 28 for 60 from the field or something ridiculous like that. Like they took that many shots, and then the next person on their team took like 6 or like 7 shots. And it's like, how is that fun for the 4 other guys, number one? And number two, how is that the best for your team?
Yeah, it's putting those personal goals ahead of the team goals. And look, there's obviously been a lot of players throughout history who really love scoring points and been labelled ball hogs. I mean, that was often labelled at MJ, and certainly early in his career he may have focused on that and above his teammates who weren't as good as weren't good enough to really be as competitive as he wanted to be. But at the same time, when MJ was putting up all those huge scoring games and not winning, that was a knock on him. And that somehow we've changed to, oh well, you did all you could, but was it the right plays? Were you just trying to get your numbers and so forth? It's that has become the narrative. But to that point, when it is replicated on the virtual hardwood, that's kind of like the modern sim gamer, which is funny. We talk about what's realistic, but that kind of emulating that kind of play, as far as the current NBA, if you go to my NBA eras, I suppose it's going to be that you want to go to that old school style of play, and we want to play that way, and we also tried in older games as well, obviously. But it is actually realistic to play that way, unfortunately.
A couple years ago, we touched on, what it means to be like a sim gamer,
yes.
And like the definition of a sim gamer and everything. And I think that this is a great opportunity to revisit that and kind of dive a little bit deeper into it, like we already have on this show. So I think that my definition of a sim gamer is wildly different than so many people out there. And I think it's because people today are either, a lot of the 2K gamers either didn't play, number one. Number two, they grew up in a completely different era of basketball than when I was like watching and learning the game and everything. And it's really just like those two, the biggest things. And I feel like what they're trying to emulate is like that St. John's UNH game that I was just watching, where I wanted to shut it off. And I think what they want to emulate is they're watching James Harden with the Philadelphia 76ers, and they're watching Doncic with the Mavericks, and they're watching that brand of basketball, and they're watching teams shoot 70 to 80 threes per game, and they're watching them not attack the basket with a vengeance. All of this stuff. They're watching like hardly any post play, so they're not seeing much post play in the NBA today. They're not seeing teams really get in there and rise up and take jump shots in the mid-range. So they're seeing something completely different than what I would consider smart and sim basketball, right? See, I think you would agree. When we grew up, sim basketball for us was like making a good one-on, like if it's a good one-on-one move on your guy, it's not an over dribble, right? It's getting a quick first step on your guy, executing a quick crossover and blowing by him, leaning one way and spinning the other. And it's smart basketball. That's sim to us.
Sure.
Dumping the ball into the post, and then if a double team comes, kicking it out and then dumping it back in and then making a move in the post. That's sim to us, right? Having somebody flash to the elbow and you hit him right when he gets to the elbow and he rises up and takes a jump shot like a 15-footer and knocks it down. That's sim to us. Boxing out. That's sim to us, right? You don't see that a lot in the NBA today. But something as simple as getting your behind on somebody, moving them out of the way, and, jumping to get the board, that's sim to us. Grabbing the ball off the board, getting it into the middle of the floor, and running a fast break. So a quick outlet, quick fast break, attack the basket, give and go, etc. That's sim to you and I, right? So like all of those. Oh, and pride on defense.
Of course,
if somebody's coming to the rim and everything, you try to contest them. You want to get a loud block. You want to get an in-your-face play.
No easy buckets inside. Yeah, that's what we
right.
know. Yeah.
So everything that I just mentioned is not common now, right? That mindset, everything that I just mentioned, which I consider real basketball, like that isn't what is common now. So like, what's common now, and then I'm going to throw it over to you to get your perspective. But what's common now is people are seeing like LeBron, Doncic, Harden, etc., dribble the air out of the ball at the top of the key. And if it's not a star dribbling the ball out off the top at the top of the key, it's people just looking like three hunting. That's what the majority of the game is. And people, you got to understand, 70 to 80 threes a game, that's three hunting. Right there, that is absolutely three hunting. It's the majority of the game. So people are seeing contested threes go up all game. They're seeing some over dribbling and whatnot. They're seeing an open paint. They're seeing less high flying dunks, less amazing blocks, all of that stuff. They're not seeing people attack the mid range. They're not seeing them attack in the post and everything. And they're seeing like a completely different style of basketball. But their idea of sim is completely different than my idea.
Exactly. And it brings up that definition of what is sim, which is replicating real life. And to your point, that is what they're doing. They are being sim according to that definition and according to the current style of play. Now, back when we were growing up watching basketball, a lot of teams had different styles, whereas now the NBA has adopted more of that homogenized, analytics-driven style. So you do have different teams and different coaches running different plays. Sure, they do have their own strategies in a way, but you had more variation back in the day. You had the teams that ran the triangle or parts of it. You had the very pick-and-roll heavy Jazz, for example, Stockton and Malone. So you did have those very distinct styles of play. And of course, the West was often seen as the run and gun, whereas the East was that the bully ball kind of style. And not all up and down the conferences. There were variations once again, and of course, you had the Bulls doing both the triangle and give the ball to MJ and get out of the way. So there was variation even within the teams themselves. So when we wanted to see games become more realistic back in the 90s and early 2000s, we were asking for things like more strategic play, reward the strategic play, have teams resemble their real-life counterparts, and players and teams playing like their real-life counterparts. And we have seen more of that over the years. It did get more and more sim as 2K reached its peak, and that was fantastic. But we are seeing less of a focus on that now, or so it feels, or at least the style of play has changed, so we're not seeing that. And the other thing is that the popularity of the popular modes, I should say, in the games are My Career and My Team. Now, My Team, you are playing with real players, but sometimes juiced up versions of them, and with fantasy lineups rather than real NBA teams. You can get real NBA playbooks, as you know, in My Team, but you are applying them to usually complete fantasy squads. In My Career, obviously, you are playing with your own avatar, which you are engaging in the whole metagaming and getting the right jump shot and getting the right badges. People found out that left-handed jumpers seemed to be higher percentage, so people were just making their players left-handed for that reason only, not the fact that they were left-handed in real life and wanted to reflect that, or just wanted a left-handed player. It was done for meta advantage, metagaming, as I said. So we're seeing more of that. We're seeing gamers not playing with real NBA players. So that's also distancing itself from Sim as well. Not actually playing with real NBA lineups and trying to play that strategic game, even that realistic style, but being locked to a player and with your souped up avatar and putting up ridiculous stats online or offline. So that's different from Sim as well.
Yeah, they're treating it more like a fighting game,
like a video game,
almost.
Which
yeah,
is, but I mean, yeah.
Well, no, it's not even that. It's more treating it like a different genre.
Yes,
almost altogether.
We are seeing that,
as opposed to a basketball game. But I also wanted to point out one other piece, and then I want to get into something else. Another thing that's a lost art and you don't see enough is in today's NBA, how often do you see NBA teams look for or exploit mismatches? Hardly ever. If there's a bigger guy on the court and switching is constant in the NBA, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Nobody likes to stay with their man anymore. The guidance to these players too is just like switch everything. So oftentimes you'll have a guy who's, if there is one out there, because so many teams play small ball, but there's a guy out there who's like 6'10" or 6'11" sometimes, and he's switched on to a guy who's 6'5" and under, right? And they don't look for him. They don't look for him under the basket. They don't look for him in the post. They don't look for him in the high post. Half the time, this big guy is usually just standing away from the basket. A lot of times he's standing behind the three-point line, or, maybe 18, 19 feet away from the basket. So we're not even seeing another sim aspect of basketball when we were growing up was, you get to that mismatch, right? If Kendall Gill is switched on Shaq, what are you doing? You're giving the ball to Shaq. And Shaq is going to destroy Kendall Gill. Bottom line, period. And you would look for those mismatches, and you don't see that today. And a lot of times there are no mismatches out in the NBA because teams are playing small ball. I watched part of the Golden State game, one of their more recent ones. I think Draymond Green played center the majority of the game.
Yeah.
And Draymond Green is 6'6". So, a lot of times your center in today's NBA doesn't have center skills. Number one, so he doesn't even have a great back to the basket game or mid-range game in general, and he's not a great rim protector a lot of time either. But he's also undersized. He's the size of what a small forward would have been, back in the day. So that's another piece of this. But I also wanted to get to another thing that I don't consider sim at all, but a lot of people consider this sim gaming. Just standing there waiting, people will run a play. And so they'll select a play and run it. And they have all these arrows that show up on the screen just because they have the play calling messages up. And it's showing their players going to different spots. It's telling you where to go. There's no instincts with this. It's just you're following arrows, right? It's like you're completing a puzzle.
Yeah.
And you go to a spot, you throw it to the next to the player where it tells you to throw it to, it tells you who to throw it to. He catches the ball. You wait again for the next person to run their route. He runs his route. You pass it to him, and then you take a shot, even if it's contested. You just shoot it just because you ran the play. Yay! That's not sim basketball, right? But a lot of people think it is because they ran the play. The thing that's actually sim basketball, Andrew, and I think you would agree, is operating with instincts. And if you do run a play, if that first person who comes off the screen gets open, you can fire that shot, right? Or you can attack the rim. You don't have to run the play all the way through. Or if you start to run a play and something doesn't look right or the matchups don't look right, you run a different play. Or you can run a play and if you feel after you run the play that you have a mismatch, you can attack your guy and you don't even make a pass there. But like there's these people who think that playing sim basketball is selecting a play, standing there, and then watching your players run around and just following the arrows. That's not sim basketball. That's not realistic.
It's about taking advantage of those opportunities that you're running the play to. It does have a conclusion if you run it all the way through. But if there is as you say, a mismatch, if there is a defensive error and you've got a wide open lane to the hoop, you don't just stop and make that pass back to the 3-point line because that's how the play is supposed to finish. There is a goal in mind with that play, but it also opens up other opportunities. That is what, as you say, what running the plays is supposed to be. So paying attention to what else is going on the court. But it does come down to, like you said, playing it like a different genre of video games and just running it through and this going from point A to point B to point C, which certainly does happen in basketball. But again, you have those branching plays, you have that freelance basketball, you have I've got a wide open lane, I don't need to make an extra pass, I'm going to take that easy shot. So you have that aspect to it. You have when you are using your own avatars, you have that souped up avatar that is overpowered and has all the right animations, and it does come down to that metagaming, as I've said so many times before, that really just ruins the online scene after a while. The early days, it's not so bad, but then when it gets to everybody is a 99 overall, or 90 plus overall, and with all the badges and everything, and now they've figured out the meta, and also it does also follow the real life NBA to a certain extent, in so much as that homogenized style, not coming up with your own style, your own strategies, but what are the popular influencers saying, Derek? What's the right build? What's the jump shot that will go in 90% of the time? What is this way to break and beat the game, rather than to follow Desar's creed? Don't play video games, play basketball. Now we're kind of playing fighting games, and people are actually advocating for that.
It's a mockery of the real sport. I don't know. Like, that's the way I look at it. It's just kind of like disappointing. I also want to point something out too about the whole play calling thing. I think it was De'Aaron Fox that said this in, like, it was an Instagram post or whatever after a loss. He said that, like, sometimes teams run like 2 different sets per game and whatnot. I think he was talking either about their team for that game or the opponent that they were playing.
I remember that. Yeah.
These teams are not running different plays on every possession. And that should be pretty clear when you watch the game, especially with how many contested shots go up and how many, like, quick shots go up in today's NBA.
It's funny. I see a lot of people say, today's offenses are much more complex and advanced, and they're really not. I mean... No,
they're not. They are absolutely not.
Considering how many people over the years were confused by the triangle. Remember that was the whole thing when somebody tried to adopt the triangle and... at Phil Jackson's insistence, and people were kind of confused by it. So the idea that won 11 championships, that offensive scheme, the triangle, was often seen as complex, and there's nobody running anything like that now. So it's not more complex. I'm not saying, it's you don't even have to get into the whole, it's dumbed down. It's just not. There were advanced strategies back then and now, and simple strategies back then and now. Although there's
not as much strategy today, that should be pretty obvious.
That's true. Yeah,
but if the game, here's the common sense aspect of it. If the game becomes more one-dimensional, there is less strategy.
Yeah. Also, point
blank, and it's way more one-dimensional than it used to be.
Yeah. Also, to Draymond Green's recent point, people are not mobile phones. They, we are not technology that's advancing since the 80s because of technological advancements. So. Yeah,
we're human beings.
We're human beings. Yeah, it comes down to human evolution doesn't work that way, and the actual. If you look at the sport, the changes that have happened, as you say, becoming more one-dimensional, becoming more homogenized, then it's really not advanced.
Yeah, what's crazy to me is how many players today are in real life are not as comfortable taking contested shots. They're not as comfortable taking contested shots around the rim, in the mid-range. They seem more confident doing it from 3, but they don't hit a higher percentage. They don't hit a good percentage of them. But there's just a lack of ability and confidence in the below the 3-point line. And I think that's such a huge part of the game that's being torn away. Right? Like, that's a huge part of basketball. It's a whole area of the floor that's not being used. And I can see that when, you upload your footage for online play and when I see other people upload. So I have a question. So when you were first playing, when you first got NBA 2K23 and you first entered the online scene, and when you and Kenny and Leo got out there and whatnot, before the meta builds took over and the meta gaming and the 99 or overalls or over 90 overalls, etc. How was the basketball? How was the quality of the basketball and how was the quality of your opponents?
I mean, it was pretty much as it is now, like, as far as strategy and not avoiding the mid-range and trying to chuck threes and so forth. The strategy was the same. It's just that they didn't have the ratings or the badges to or the having mastered the mechanics and the green releases of this year and the timing and whatnot. They hadn't mastered that yet. So anybody who wasn't really playing strategically, it was easy to match up with them. Then after the balance shifted and they started to get overpowered, suddenly we were at a disadvantage trying to play proper basketball compared to them. So that was the issue.
Yeah. Don't you agree though that the game's mechanics, we talked about it on last episode, I believe, when we were doing the 2K23 full review. Don't you agree that the game's mechanics kind of discourage operating in the mid-range and the post?
They do, yeah. I mean,
and I think that also hurts. Let's put it that way.
I mean, Kenny tries to back down and does. He's got some great highlights. I shared some of those early ones where he was backing down and just throwing down some great reverses on much shorter players. But there's still not that diverse, deep post game that even compared to 2K14, as you know how much I love the post game in 2K14, Derek, as you do too, I'm sure, that you don't have that. So it's harder to operate in the post and take advantage of those mismatches and just so many easy shots that Kenny was missing, not through to a lack of skill, but simply the mechanics of the game and having, we've got some defensive
or the
badges.
Badged out defender.
Yes,
right, exactly. I was about to say, or the badged out defender.
Yeah,
and then in the mid-range, there's all that suction.
Yes.
So and then you can't hit contested shots. So it actually takes away two major parts of what you and I consider great in sim basketball. It takes away everything inside the 3-point line for the most part.
It's funny, in the first season I could shoot with that with the jumper I had, and then I went a couple of sessions where I did not make a single jump shot. The only baskets I could make were quick layups at the hoop when I had an open lane with my point guard. So, and it's not like I don't know how to time shots, but because of the adjustments, because of the more badges coming in that would affect my shooting, I didn't have all the badges to counteract that. The whole balance, trying to balance things out with badges and metagaming again, that I was just suddenly, even though my stick skills hadn't deteriorated, even though I was doing what I was supposed to do, they were able to rush in at the last moment and take away that green release or whatever. And affect the shot percentage, as the case may be, and it just became unplayable.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. It sucks too that when you go through a full game and the only thing you feel like you can hit is like a layup or like a cheesy drop step.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
Like it's like if you feel like there's only like a couple different ways that you can score, even though you know your mind and you know your abilities, that you should be able to do more. And you have to play a whole game like that. That's got to be frustrating.
One of the great things about playing 3v3 Pro-Am was, I mean, as much as I like, it's kind of like playing playground, full court 3-on-3, playground basketball with limited rules, no free throws, for example. But and first to 21. And as much as I like the playing with full rules and everything, and we were all kind of like that, and 5-on-5 Pro-Am would have been preferable. And back in the day, of course, you could play with a minimum of 3 in 5v5 Team Pro-Am. But if there is an advantage of the 3v3 Pro-Am first to 21, it's that it's more realistic than Playground, while also having the benefit of, if the game's going badly, it's over quickly. Whereas in the rec, if it's going badly, you've got to play it through to the end. Or quit, although now if you even dashboard, you actually get a pinged on your account for bad sportsmanship, because there's no forfeit option. And if you... I've talked before about a game that I was playing by myself, where everybody quit in the rec, and I tried to play through to the end because I had activated a double XP coin, and they just started triple teaming me in the backcourt to force me into all the turnovers and grade out of the game, thereby wasting all my badge and VC progress and their double XP coin. Anyway, so there's no right way to do it. You know what I mean, Derek? There's no... In that situation, I either quit and get pinged for bad sportsmanship, dashboard and get pinged for bad sportsmanship, or try and struggle through 1-on-5 in the rec, which is already garbage and toxic anyway, and for them to say, okay, well, we're just going to be unsportsmanlike and triple team you in the backcourt. We're not even going to let you try and play with the AI players just to finish the game. So there's just so much of that. It's just because again, it's not become about playing basketball. It's just about people who want to play a video game and own the opponent and embarrass people and force people to quit or whatever. Just no sportsmanship like it's a sport or something, Derek.
It's funny you bring up the going to 21 thing and that being a great option, because I've connected with a couple people in the community on And One basketball for PlayStation 2, and there's that option where you can have a timed game, or you can play to like 11, 15, or 21 or something like that.
That's
I
right,
always
yeah.
choose the going to 21 option. It reminds me of going to play pickup basketball, like I have all my life. And you show up to the court and you know that, if there's only 10 people there and whatnot, you'll play 5-on-5 and you'll play a game to 15. But then if there's people waiting, we'll play the game to 11. And at least that if a team's getting buckets and whatnot, the people that are waiting on the side of the court are not going to have to wait too long. And if you're in a bad situation on the court and you're stuck on a bad team or whatnot, and it's just super toxic, that the game isn't going to go on endlessly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I do love that option of being able to play to a score as opposed to play to a clock.
Yeah, and for the online arena, that's why I'm sure Playground is very popular. That, and of course, you can dress up your player in this non-Barbie dress-up game, of course, and there are the wilder dunks in the Playground that they aren't available in the Pro-Am modes. It is more, it's kind of that halfway point between Playground and proper and normal Pro-Am and the NBA gameplay. So I do enjoy it for that. It was fun for a while, but as of Season 2, it just went downhill so fast because everybody who had been on the game and on the grind from day one and just or paying, of course, to upgrade, and they'd figured out all the meta and so forth, it just completely ruined the balance. There's about a month where the online scene is good now, and then it just completely just goes down the toilet.
Well, the good thing is that you still love 2K14. And you're doing that retro series for the NLSC YouTube, and you're still playing your My Career and whatnot. And I put on NBA Inside Drive 2004, so I'm diving into my collection as well to kind of keep things fresh. And I played a game between the Rockets and the Grizzlies, and I uploaded that to the NLSC YouTube. How great is Inside Drive 2004? Really solid gameplay, really fun for the time and whatnot. But yeah, I'm really glad that we have the collections that we do, because we can always keep it fresh.
Absolutely, and we do need to connect this holiday season. Hopefully I won't be as busy and caught up this week, and we can line up those, make our schedule line up and do that. Looking forward to doing so, as we've done so often over the past couple of years. And yes, diving into those collections, going back to an old favorite, it's why we advocate it so often. And, it bears repeating, Derek, that if you're not enjoying the latest game, find something that you do enjoy. I mean, look, some people will just go to another genre, which is perfectly valid as well. You and I do play games other than basketball games, although we do obviously love basketball and basketball gaming. But we do have these collections to dip into. Love seeing those Inside Drive highlights. Kevin Calabro, as I said in the forum, I wish they'd been able to get him for some more games. And perhaps if the Inside Drive series had continued a bit longer and not fallen by the wayside, we would have got more Kevin Calabro. I'd love to hear him in 2K as part of the rotating commentators. I certainly prefer him to the alternate team we have at the moment.
Kevin Calabro is amazing in the Inside Drive series, and so is Marcus Johnson as the color commentator. My brother loves listening to Marcus Johnson. He has a lot of cool lines in those games. The cool thing about the Inside Drive games is they just feel so alive. Right, that's like the commentary, the on-court action. It's fast-paced. It's super fun. Great stat tracking in that game. Live Inside Drive 2003 actually has hidden legends, which we're using in a season right now, and whatnot. Yeah, I still think Inside Drive is one of the most underrated, or the most underrated, basketball sim series that nobody really talks about.
And it doesn't help that it was Microsoft exclusive, because not everybody had an Xbox.
And it was fleeting. Yeah. It was only 3 years where they put out a game that was notable, because Inside Drive 2000, like you had stated, is not the strongest title. But 2002, 2003, and 2004 were pretty excellent.
But no, it's interesting to really consider how the definition of sim gaming and a sim gamer has changed in the 2 years since we talked about the measure of a sim gamer in that old episode 332, I believe. If people want to go back and listen to that for a contrast.
No, absolutely. It's been a couple of years since we covered this. I think we were a lot more in depth this time, even than the show back then. But definitely listen to that episode if you would like. I think a lot of the things that we did say on this show were kind of echoing what we said back then, because our idea of sim gaming hasn't changed, right? Our idea of sim gaming is probably going, and sim basketball is probably always going to be the same. But yeah, I think that was a good show as well.
But before we wrap up here, Derek, how about we open up the mailbag?
To the mailman. Slamming it down with a nasty dunk.
So I asked the community, without cheating, can you name the top 6 overall players in NBA 2K17 from the default roster, so like the current team roster at the time? And then as a bonus question, can you name the top 6 overall from the classic teams and whatnot with no duplicates? And if you remember correctly, NBA 2K17 with their rating system put the current players, as far as like a rating scale, put them in comparison to the classic players. Like that's the way they did their ratings. So there's a lot more low overall ratings in NBA 2K17 than you would think, as far as like teams with their best player being 81 overall or like 83 overall or 84 overall, etc. Because they did that new rating scaling for that game.
Probably why I enjoyed that game so much, actually.
Yeah, there you go. That makes sense.
So you threw out the top 6 of the then current teams, and then the classics as the classic teams as the bonus. And just a reminder, 1 through 6 on the current teams: 97, 96, 96, 96, 95, and 95. And for the classic teams, 99, 98, 98, 97, 97, and 97. So once again, Derek, I have not cheated myself. I have not gone back and looked after you posted the question. So once again, I can play the game.
Perfect. And I think you did a little bit worse last week than you did in the prior week as far as, your guesses. But this is really hard to do, putting somebody on the spot, because to be honest with you, if somebody asked me to guess the top 6, I wouldn't have guessed this 6. I would have gotten a couple of them, but I wouldn't have been able to guess all 6.
So this is my attempt at redemption here. Okay, so probably not going to be throwing these out in order, but just as they come to mind for likelihood, I'm going to say LeBron. I will say LeBron at 97, Durant, Curry, Harden, Kawhi Leonard. Is that 5 I've got now?
That's 5, yep.
That's 5. And, yeah, it is tough, isn't it? Like now I'm trying to think of unorthodox ones. Who was pumped up around about that time? And I'll say Kyrie Irving.
All right. So the first 5, you were right. So you got 5 out of 6. Kyrie Irving's only 90 overall.
Okay.
The other 96 is Westbrook. So the way it works is LeBron is 97, Harden is 96, Kawhi Leonard is 96, Westbrook is 96, Durant is 95, and Curry is 95.
Not bad.
The Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers are the only 2 teams with 2 90 overall players. LeBron 97, Kyrie 90, and obviously, like I just stated, Durant and Curry both 95 overall. So really well done by you there. You got 5 out of 6.
Not bad. There's my redemption. Let's see if I can keep the streak going with the classics. So once again, 99, 2 98s, and 3 97s in the top 6 there. So I'm going to say MJ, Magic, LeBron, Kareem, Hakeem, and Will Chamberlain.
So I think you got 4 of them, 3 or 4 of them. So it's Jordan 99, LeBron 98, Magic 98, Shaq 97, Kareem 97, and Larry Bird 97.
Of course, Bird. Yeah, I thought he might be a bit lower because of the athletic ratings that sometimes dragged down the overall. But of course, there was the intangible ratings that year the intangible rating, I should say, in 2K17 that year, so that might have helped out there.
They also have Larry Bird looking jacked in that game, so maybe that contributed to it. I don't know.
What was his face
not sure
like in
why,
2K17?
but they have him looking. The face is better than 2K16, but it's not the best. It's not a bad Larry, actually. In 2K17, it is far superior to that, whatever that was in NBA 2K18. Barry
the actual
Lard.
plumber and dentist? Yeah,
exactly. But no, good job. So you got 3 out of 6 there, and you got 5 out of 6 with the current NBA at the time. So some other notables with the current NBA. Chris Paul was 91. Isaiah Thomas for the Celtics, before all his injuries, was 90. Paul George, 91. Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins. So actually they were on the same team. That's the other other team that had 2 90 overall players. Anthony Davis, 94. DeMarcus Cousins, 91. Damian Lillard, 90. John Wall, 90. Greek Freak, 90. And Jimmy Butler, 90. And those are actually all of the 90 overall players and above that are in the game, as far as like the current, like the default current rosters.
I have to admit, when they do the overall rating reveals during the previous season, I used to get kind of interested and excited in them, especially if they're obviously coming with a screenshot as well. But I must admit I've lost interest in recent years.
Yeah, a little bit too many. There's a lot of politics involved, and then we're not as big of a fan of the NBA now as we were.
True.
Even back when like 2K17 was being released, and I think that plays a really big factor. Like when overall ratings were revealed in the early, mid 2010s and whatnot, we would pay attention and we'd like have comments on it and everything. But now it's just kind of blah.
So yeah, that's not too bad. That's what, 9 out of 12 on my part.
Yeah, I think that's the best you've done so far. So that's really good, especially with not looking. That's good.
Actually, 8 out of 12 because it was 5 and 3. 8 out of 12. So no, that's not bad. 75%. There you go. So getting to the community responses now, we have Roger Ward, one of the NBA Live 2001 legends, of course. For the current players guessed Bron, Curry, Leonard, Westbrook, Durant, and Anthony Davis.
He got 5, and Anthony Davis was very close. He was 94 overall, so that is an outstanding job by Roger. Anthony Davis was putting up numbers at that point, and I think also the talk about his potential was through the roof. DeMarcus Cousins, he was his teammate there, and he's 91 overall in the game. DeMarcus Cousins was a FanDuel or DraftKings dream, as far as he would literally just put up the numbers on so many nights and he'd get you like 70, 80, 90 different fantasy points. So like back at the time I was playing FanDuel and everything, and you can bet that I would always choose DeMarcus Cousins for my lineup because he would put up these ridiculous stat games where he'd have like 35 points, like 15 to 16 rebounds, 7 assists or something like that. And he could propel your fantasy team into the money.
I've actually lost track of who Cousins plays for now.
Is he even in the league? I don't think he's playing in the now NBA.
Let me check. Yeah, you're right. He's actually out of the league at the moment. Last played for Denver.
I feel like we would have heard from him at this point, whether it be being thrown out of the game or somebody saying he's toxic or something like that. Like, I feel like we would have seen something about DeMarcus Cousins on social media if he had been playing.
And next up we have Phil Lime, 2002. Thank you, shout out to Phil Lime for giving me the heads up on how to pronounce your screen name. His guesses are LeBron, Curry, KD, Harden, Westbrook, and Kawhi.
So yeah, he got all of them. That is excellent. Unfortunately, at the NLSC, we are not sponsored, so I can't throw a bunch of cash or a prize at you. But I can say, congratulations, you got them all, and that's excellent.
Our congratulations and admiration are worth more than money, Derek, I would say.
Absolutely.
And as for the classic teams, guesses the GOAT, Magic, LeBron, Bird, Iverson, and Kareem.
5 out of 6. He said Iverson instead of Shaq, but 5 out of 6 is damn good.
And actually, he did get one wrong there, Derek. Yinka Dare is not 99 overall in NBA 2K17.
We should do a whole podcast centered around Yinka Dare and his low assists numbers, lack of assists. his unwillingness to pass all of that stuff.
I mean,
There's got to be a bigger story around that.
When you're that good, do you need to pass?
No, exactly. When you're Shaq times 2, yeah, you don't really need to.
Shaq and Wilt combined, absolutely. They're throwing a bit of David Robinson as well. Most hilariously low ratings in NBA Jam tournament edition you've ever seen. Yinkadare. But also got a third response on the Discord, Derek.
So actually, it was a tweet, and it was deleted. So I'm not going to say who put out the guesses, but he got 5 out of the 6 right. I'm not sure why he deleted it. He guessed LeBron, Curry, Durant, Harden, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook. And I see why he guessed Paul George. We talked about it on a prior episode about Allen Iverson in the original 2K kind of getting like a hometown favorite rating. He got like a 97. He was the cover athlete, even though he wasn't the best player in the league at that time. And, he wasn't better than Shaq, etc. So guessing Paul George makes sense because he was the cover athlete for 2K17, but Paul George was only a 91 overall in 2K17.
Kind of got the Vince Carter and NBA Live 2004 treatment. Got a high rating, deservedly so, but not too inflated.
Right, exactly. But no, thank you to the community for your guesses and playing along and supporting the show, supporting our content and everything. We have a great community.
Absolutely, and I'm interested to see what ratings you pull out of the hat next week, Derek.
Yeah, this is fun. I feel like there's so many different games out there, that I can choose and quiz the community, and it seems like they get into it, so it's a win-win.
So stay tuned for that and all of our future podcasts and other original content, of course, and the YouTube channel. But with that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us each and every week, either on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us and, of course, stay up to date with all of our aforementioned content. So, Derek, go ahead and plug those handles.
Yeah, you can reach me on Twitter at D43G or at D4384. I'm also on YouTube, D43, and on the NLSC, D43.
I am Andrew in our forum, and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. Our Instagram is NLSC Basketball. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.